Okay, you can see it?
Yep.
All right. Um, so JUnit, basically it's made so you can test your code as you put it together. Um, and we'll kind of go over the same topics that we usually do. So it's a framework. It's become very common nowadays, and so a lot of IDEs just started including it with their base package. So it's likely if you're using Eclipse, it has it built in. I'm using NetBeans. I know that they started including it. If not, it's something you can always download and add on very easily. Essentially, it's a bunch of classes interfaces that allow you to test your code or just portions of the code. And the reason you'd want to do that is because instead of having to build your entire program and then test it, you can test it piece by piece as you go. And that way you know that you're working on a firm foundation as you're building your app. Plus, you can always go back and test code and see if something else broke, and it will kind of help you pinpoint where the issue is in the chain. For implementation, this I actually took from the CIT360 class, which covered JUnit. And when you're developing your code, you'll want to define how the code is supposed to work, uh, the limits, and kind of put those limits in a matrix. You can see on the side here, um, the limits has 5 entries, a valid one, 2 invalid ones, and then 2 boundary. And this do this method is essentially for calculating a percentage. So you can see a negative number would be invalid. A number outside of 100 would also be invalid.
Oh, right, because you can all it's percentage. So,
Exactly. So you're looking at 0 to 100. And so the test matrix is what you'll use to develop your testing, essentially. So here's an example. Um, so do this method. It's just essentially saying test everything to make sure it fits within 0 and 100. If it does, return it. If it doesn't, return -1. So the actual code is on the left. The test code is on the right. And all you're doing is injecting your test into that method and then having the method return something back to your test. And then at the very bottom, assert equals is part of the JUnit test. It's basically saying, is your injected uh, integer actually getting the expected result back?
oh,
So the assert equals was the one I was familiar with, so I did that one real quick. However, there's 8 different assertions. The top 3 use Boolean conditions, and then the bottom ones are objects.